Do you have some very negative, unhealthy, unhelpful, disempowering kind of self-talk that's going on and it's getting in the way of your healing and freedom journey? Today, I want to talk about that and how we can begin to discern this. And I'm going to give you 10 different kinds that may be hindering your journey. Welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. Mark DeJesus here. I am your brother from another mother, bringing you insights along the way. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health. And if you are too, you have arrived at a great place. As I mentioned, I'm going to get into some disempowering aspects of self-talk. And all of us have what is called this self-talk thing. It's an inner dialogue that goes on throughout our day. And studies have shown that the majority of self-talk is highly negative, disempowering, hopeless. It keeps us stuck. And for many, they're realizing their inner dialogue is not only negative, it can be downright abusive. We say things to ourselves we would often never say to anyone else, but we've become used to it. Now, I've found a lot of freedom in confronting negative and disempowering self-talk that constantly I fed into. And I began to realize that these unloving patterns were working against me. And they were exactly that. They were unloving. They were unfruitful. They disconnected me from seeing things the way that I needed to see them. So what I want to do here today is bring out these 10. They're negative. They're disempowering. They hold us back. And I think that recognizing them can be a first step towards help and towards healing and towards our growth and maturity. Because a lot of times we don't even realize that what we're under is it's working against our hope. It's working against us seeing what we need to see to take fruitful steps. Now, when I teach on negative thinking, I've been talking about this for years. I have some material I did years ago on this. I like to remind people of something when it comes to negative thinking, that the opposite of negative thinking is not necessarily positive thinking. You know, that can feed a very hyper positive kind of like always look at the bright side kind of mindset, which at times that can move into another ditch of denial-based thinking. No, what I talk about when I talk about the opposite of negative thinking is empowered thinking. You see things soberly, but you ground yourself in faith, hope, and love. And it makes room for the grace of Jesus to enter into our lives and realize, okay, there's a next step that I can take. Because empowerment helps you to gain the energy and strength to just simply take the next step. That's really what it's really about. And we're taking a journey mindset. And a lot of this is going to work against a journey mindset and allowing you to learn and take fruitful steps. And a lot of this is about the inner critic. Now, what I'm going to share with you, you can find many of these online. You can find them in psychology textbooks. You can find them in all kinds of mental health kind of talk. But what I want to do is focus on 10 that I've found are important to recognize. And you could add some more to this list if you like to. But the first one we're going to get into, number one, is an overall negative filter, where you default to seeing the negative of a situation, ignoring the good, ignoring the positive, ignoring the hopeful, even ignoring the possibilities. It's like the negative just takes over. It creates a negative bias so that you start looking for that negative, whatever it is. In psychology, they call it a cognitive bias, where now you've seen something and now you see everything through that lens. So what you'll do is you'll minimize good things. You'll minimize good accomplishments. I know in my life I've had to be aware of this, where I would dismiss the good or the victories or the great things, and I would just narrow in on something negative. We can do this in group situations where we have great interactions with people, but there's that one person where it wasn't so great, and we just focus on that, and then that becomes the lens over which we see our experiences, okay? Now, it's important to understand that this kind of lens can actually be a protective mechanism. We can often say, if I see the world through the good, or if I see good things, or if I see hopeful things, or if I see through empowerment, then maybe I will lose sight of what's bad or dangerous, and I won't be safe anymore. I'm going to put myself into an unsafe place. What I'm going to get into is a lot of these 10, they're actually self-protective mechanisms. Now, I when I was pastoring years ago, I walked our church through negativity, and we went through a negativity fast. It was an interesting experiment, and many were excited because we would do a fast together, food or whatever, Daniel fast or what have you, maybe once a year or something like that. I said, we're going to do something different. We're going to do a negativity fast. And I created this sheet and threw some things into it that helped us to break the power of negativity. And many in the church within the first week, they were saying, can I do a food fast? Because this is actually really, really difficult. It revealed how negative our lives are and how much we live off of negativity, how much we thrive off of it. So it's understandable. We have our venting, we have our frustrating days, and we stewing in negativity. But beware when it becomes a driving force and it begins to overtake how you're seeing where you are and where you're going, because it won't let you see the empowering steps that can be available for you and to you. So the second one is taking things too personally, where we interpret things as an accusation of shame against ourselves. And so you see somebody who's maybe in a bad mood and you go, what did I do wrong? Or somebody gives you an interaction that's not so pleasant. You take it personally. You can get criticism. You take it too personally. People that are sensitive or even hypersensitive emotionally can really struggle with this. And in it, we can get angry. We can get defensive. I've had plenty of experience where I've had to learn to work through this, and am continuing to learn, both in my personal life, because I can take things way too personally, and also in my work. Of course, I'm putting my story out there, and these are very vulnerable things that I share about, things I struggle with and things I've worked through, and helping others. And with that, you're going to get some not so nice interactions. But I've had to learn in the journey how to not take things so personally, and part of it is not taking myself too seriously. That's a big aspect to this one, is not taking ourselves too seriously. Otherwise, we're going to get lost in unnecessary rumination, resentment, and spinning. We'll become, in our relationships, let's be honest, if you take everything too personally, you become very high maintenance. Can we just be honest about it? Where people feel like they have to tiptoe around you. But deep inside, you're very hard on yourself. And you turn everything that goes wrong into something you did wrong. And it doesn't let you see things the way that you need to see them. The third one is one that I've been mentioning for years and helping people to recognize it, because many OCDers and perfectionists, those who struggle with scrupulosity, they've got this thing at work. It's one of the distortions that fuels obsessive compulsive patterns, and that's catastrophizing. This big, long word. It's quite a bit of letters in that, right? It's highly exaggerating the potential negative consequences of a thought, emotion, an action, or situation, often leading to increasing anxiety and fear. It can apply to a thought you have. It can apply to an emotion you have. You overreact to it, or maybe something that you did, or maybe something that you think you could have done, or a situation or an experience. And like I said, those who have a perfectionistic influence, they have OCD issues, they're going to have this there, because catastrophizing is what fuels the obsessions. It goes back to the old Chicken Little story. The sky is falling, and you become convinced that the sky is falling, and you start running around and reacting to that in the story Chicken Little. Chicken Little goes and tells everybody. That's the compulsive behavior. You see a disturbance, and then you compulsively try to do something, right? So maybe you get angry, and you go, oh, I'm such a violent person, I'm going to end up hurting someone. You have a sexual intrusive thought, I'm a sexual deviant. You have some kind of physical sensation. This means something. You start spinning about your health. It means I'm going to die. Or you take an experience of reading about somebody who maybe passed away, and you start spinning, I'm going to pass away, and it's going to happen soon. You start catastrophizing your own journey. If I don't do this thing, something bad will happen. It's the sky is falling. You could ruminate over past mistakes and it's a mouthful. Catastrophize them. You may read the scriptures, and I see this a lot, where you see certain emphatic warnings about the world or hard-hearted or people that absolutely reject and refuse to listen to truth, refuse to listen to anything of receiving Christ. And many who struggle with scrupulosity will place themselves in it. Maybe that's me, and they catastrophize it. If you have this battle in your life, I recommend you go through one of my resources. It's a video I did on this subject, on working through catastrophic thinking. Another one that's very important to recognize, and many of us have it, is black and white or all or nothing kind of thinking. We view things in extremes with no middle ground options or perspective. It's either way over here, like way over here, or it's way over here. You're either really great, and you're usually not because nothing's ever enough, or you're nothing at all. This kind of thinking is keeping you out of a journey mindset. You get disqualified very easily, so you don't allow for learning. It prevents you from seeing nuance in situation. There's a lot of black and white, all or nothing thinking in social media interactions, right? It gets into our political environment, but it gets into even our social interactions. And you have to be aware of when this black and white kind of thinking takes over and it's infecting the way you see a lot of things. Because there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of journey, there's a lot of grounded perspectives that we can't see when we're in the black and white kind of thinking, right? You can write people off right away with black and white thinking. You can label them and just dismiss them and disqualify them right away. Something that's less than perfect is seen as a total failure. You can start becoming highly critical of yourself over mistakes, and so there's no learning involved. It's like, if I don't get this kind of score on an exam, I'm a failure. Either I'm incredibly productive today, or I'm just a lazy person. Either you're flawless and sinless, or you're just not even a Christian. And it doesn't make room for the journey and process. I find in coaching, black and white thinkers can't see options. So maybe they're working at a tough job and they're having struggles with it. And they're like, I either need to put up with all this toxicity and just let them run me over, or I need to quit. And they come in with those two options. And I said, well, you're presenting me with A, you're presenting me with B. How about we look at C? And they're like, I can't see C. What is C? They're like, well, maybe there's some steps you could take. Here's some things you could do. Maybe have a conversation with your boss. Here's some adjustments that could be made. But black and white thinking will keep us from seeing the options. We're always staring at ditches. We can't even just see the road. And why focus on the ditches when we can actually just drive on the road itself? And if you see some lights going on right now, you may want to consider two resources I put together. One is black and white thinking hindering your life. And I talk about all or nothing perfectionism and how it impacts our view of God, because we see this a lot in Christianity. And I get some deeper understandings of that, and you can take advantage of those two broadcasts. Number 5 is overgeneralization. And what this is like you make broad negative generalizations based on a single incident, maybe one thing that happened, or maybe a handful of things that happened. And you take that now and you transpose it onto the world. There's a bit of black and white thinking that goes into it. When you start to say all people are this, all men are this, all women are this, church people are crazy, pastors are abusive, people are crazy, I'm just sick of people, I can't stand all people, right? And we have to recognize where we form our perspectives of the world based on a selected amount of interactions, because that's now going to limit potential. It's going to limit possibilities. A sober perspective says, okay, so I had some bad interactions. They are what they are. I'm not going to deny that. This doesn't mean that everyone is like that, because overgeneralization will actually limit our relationship potential and what could be available to us. Number 6 is one that is something I address a lot, and it has to do with turning on yourself, where when something difficult, I should say something difficult, it could be someone difficult, or challenging happens, right? The inner critic arises. And I do a lot of talking about the inner critic. In fact, there's aspects of this I talk about in God Loves Me and I Love Myself. In fact, a lot of what I'm talking about here, if you go, man, I need another resource, that is one that I'd highly recommend to you. So what happens is something difficult happens, or we're dealing with someone difficult. And what we do is we turn on ourselves. What's wrong with me? I'm so stupid. I can never get it together. You start shoulding all over yourself. I should have done this. I should have done that. Or you get into this regret kind of syndrome where, if I had only done this, my whole life would be better. Now, there may be some factual evidence to that, but it's used as a inner critic that actually prevents you from moving forward. That's why I encourage you, when you recognize that in your pain and your heartache, you turn on yourself. And you need to realize, I need to start allowing compassion and grace to come in, or I'm going to keep myself stuck. You were not designed to be an enemy to yourself. You weren't. Jesus didn't die on the cross and resurrect so that you'd be screaming, yelling, fussing, shoulding, yelling at yourself. But many of you in your mental health journey, you get frustrated. You feel like you're repeating the same patterns over and over again. You're not giving room for the learning. So therefore, in your loneliness, you look around, you don't see anybody, so you just turn on yourself. And what I want you to do is, in that state, to make a shift and allow compassionate grace to become a greater narrative in how you're relating to yourself. Another one is, number 7 is labeling yourself with your flaws, mistakes, sins, failures, all of that. Is assigning labels to yourself based on perceived flaws or mistake. You make a mistake, you say, I'm a loser. I'm just not smart. You may have an intrusive thought and you label yourself with that thought. You feel something and you label yourself with your feelings. So you can do this with thoughts, emotions, mistakes that you actually did make. You can do this with sins. And Paul himself even said that when I sin, it's not even me doing it. It's sin that dwells within me. So beware of labeling yourself with your sin struggles, because now you're seeing yourself through the identity of it. But as believers in Christ, we have a renewed identity, but we're learning to connect to who we really are as children of God, loved before our Father in heaven. I've got a lot of material on identity renovation that you can certainly check out. Number 8 is mind reading people's motives. It's a sense of assuming you know what other people are thinking without clear evidence. In fact, we anticipate this. We anticipate people feeling a negative way about us. When a lot of times, I'm going to give you a little inside scoop. Most of the time, people are not thinking about you. They're actually thinking about themselves. Let that be a helpful insight. They are. And so, but we can think we're mind reading, we anticipate, and this can fuel what I call a rejection mindset. Well, we anticipate people don't love us, and we've had enough pain in our life and emptiness in our journey. We start anticipating that. So we walk into the room and we're already going, oh, that person doesn't like me. They don't see, they think I'm annoying, or they just don't even like me. They must be talking about me. They're out to get me. Beware of that, because it'll start creating assumptions that are really going to work against you and keep your relationship potential limited. Another thing that we need to be aware of, and I'm talking to a lot of people about this, is emotional-based conclusions. Emotion-based conclusions. Because you feel it, it must be true. And so this gets into a lot of things, even like intrusive thoughts or emotional lows in your life. So I've always had to be aware of, when I'm thinking about something, is my state in a low place? Am I in a struggling state emotionally? Because that then can influence how I interpret where I'm at, what I'm going through, or what I'm seeing. And so you may, I feel like a failure, so I must be one. And so beware of, and this goes a lot into intrusive thoughts, because many of you feel these thoughts and you're like, God, that was a crazy thought. Oh my goodness. And then you go, well, this must mean something. This must mean I want this, or this means something about me. And your emotions get carried. I feel this thing. I felt it. But Mark, I felt it. This one's different because I felt it. That's a distortion that we can fall into. The last one is dread-based fortune-telling, a constant negative or fear-based projection and prediction. It's not going to work out. You know why? Because it never does. This is where we take disappointment from the past and we start projecting it onto our future. Beware of this, because it's going to create limitations and it's going to get into the world of your self-talk. Now, all 10 of these have some things in common. They lack 3 things. They lack compassion, because compassion embraces you, brings patience, it brings kindness. They lack nurture, because what we often need is nurture to calm our minds, to calm our hearts, to recalibrate our perspective and take another step. They all lack grace, because grace points us to the journey. Grace points us to Christ is at work through us. We're not condemned. We're in continual learning and continual growing, and we need to connect to the beauty of his righteousness that's at work within us. So that's really the journey of combating the thoughts, is actually filling ourselves with these areas and these experiences and understandings. But why do we keep staying locked in them? Why do these thoughts stick around and have their way with us? Well, first thing I would say is ignorance, just in the sense of we didn't know. I didn't know how negative I was. I didn't know how much I took things too personally. I didn't know I was a black and white, all or nothing kind of thinker. I didn't know that fear ran my life and how I saw things and how I anticipated things. I just didn't know. Secondly is that the familiarity. It's just what we're used to. And the family and familiarity is important too, because many of you had this running in your family. Man, you go to a get-together and all these things are just swirling around. These kind of disempowering self-talk patterns are actually going beyond self-talk into the culture of the home that you grew up in. And so many of us are ungluing ourselves from the sticky slime of these kind of thought patterns. But the third thing I want you to keep in mind, and this is what makes it difficult to untie yourself from them, is many of them are self-protective. When we turn on ourselves as a way of, well, this way I'm going to protect myself. And so I don't bother trying or taking a step, or so I won't get hurt, or my hope doesn't get let down, or I don't embarrass myself, or whatever. So we have to be aware of that. And the journey, again, it goes back to bringing ourselves into alignment with more of God's compassion, his nurture, and his grace over our life. Which one of these was helpful to you in realizing, okay, that one has an influence? Or maybe you said all of them. I could say that too, and that's all right. But let me know in the comments, and do me a favor, click that like button, and you can also click subscribe. Go over to markdejesus.com, where you can find out more about resources, materials, and you can click that donate to support these video broadcasts. I love being a brother from another mother, to be a support to your life and journey. And Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.